anytime. Stay tuned with Millennium TV and Millennium News 24 for the latest updates.
Welcome, 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 welcome. This is Universal Pathway, and I'm your host, Curtis Douglas Ill. Viewers can view our show here live every Saturday from 1 o'clock to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Millennium News 24. I'm truly honored today to be in the studio with the National Grand Sheik Nathaniel Booth Ill, hailing by way of Hawaii. He's the National Grand Sheik of the United Moorish Science Temple of America. I have a brief bio that I'll read just to give our international audience and our local audience here in the United States a brief bio as to who he is. Even though he utilized the name Cosmo Ill as his pen name, as the flyer that we promoted actually says Cosmo Ill, it's very important that ones know the vastness of the work that he's doing. His official name is Nathaniel Booth Ill. Yet today, you're going to hear me referring to him as the National Grand Sheik Cosmo Ill. So with that being said, who is Cosmo Ill? Cosmo Ill serves as the National Grand Sheik of the United Moorish Science Temple of America and also act as the National Minister of Culture within the Moorish movement. Previously, he held roles like California, the Khalifa Convention chairman, as well as he's an accomplished author known for books such as Moors, What They Didn't Teach You in Black History Class, and the Key Points trilogy. He also wrote The Moabite Key, an introduction to the Moabite script, reflecting his interest in Moorish language, history, and education. Cosmo Ill is an active media. It is active in the media across various different genres. He hosts the Cosmo Ill channel show at one point on YouTube and engage audience throughout. His presence on Instagram and Facebook under handles such as @CosmoIll, and missionary work and community work is pretty vast. As Minister of Culture, he has dedicated in preserving, teaching, and promoting Moorish heritage. His work is emphasized through his poetry, music, education, cultural events within the Moorish American community. In recent podcasts, he detailed his journey from Long Beach to build a Moorish American village in Hawaii, on the Big Island in Hawaii, a retreat and community center rooted in Moorish identity and spiritual awareness. He draws inspiration from foundation from his Moorish teachings from a very early age in his teens, and he's heavily influenced by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, who have now brought the consciousness of who the so-called Black people, Negro, branded, etc., who they truly are here in America. Not only did he bring their identity nationally, he also emphasized their religion, anciently connecting them back to a history of over 10,000 years old. The Moorish flag, as taught by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, is over 10,000 years old. The National Grand Sheik Cosmo Ill stands as a bridge builder within a diverse movement, promoting unity across different Moorish lineages and factions through his beginning in California by way of Temple 43. His writings and media contributed, regarded by some, have been listed and embraced in various different schools of thoughts, including the HSBC, the historically Black colleges and universities, to really bring in Moorish studies. So we're seeing a bridge builder who it is necessary for one as such to be among who even the people who are branded as Black, because that is the nature of Prophet Noble Drew Ali's work. It is said in Moorish science, how did the Prophet begin to uplift the Moorish Americans? By teaching them to be themselves. And who is better to do that than a minister of culture? So with that, I want to introduce you to the Minister of Culture, the National Grand Sheik of the United Moorish Science Temple of America, author, bridge builder, Moorish preserving culturally, teachings of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, Nathaniel Booth Ill, aka Cosmo Ill. How you doing, my good brother?
Peace and love. All is well. I'm doing very well, my brother. It feels really good to be back, although I'm not there with you physically. It feels good to be back on the show. I'm glad to be back and to reach your viewers and to share some of my journey and some of the jewels of wisdom and knowledge, so to speak, that I've picked up along the way.
Islam, alhamdulillah. It's truly an honor as well. Just for our viewers, back in the month of March, in March, our first show was hosted here, and interestingly enough, the Mr. Noor, Mohammed Noor, pretty much was open to interviewing the National Grand Chief Nathaniel Booth Hill, was honored right here the last Wednesday in February by the YGB Awards. He was the keynote speaker, and he actually was instrumental even in the moment. One was asked, by Mr. Noor, what should we name this show? And the Minister of Culture said Universal Pathway. So I just want to give him that credit, give him that honor. So I'm the host, but truth be told, he's very much as instrumental in creating this platform and giving ones the ability. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali said in chapter 47 of the Moore Science Temple of America, Quran, affectionately known as the Circle 7, that love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice must be taught universally to all nations. So the word universally is something that is very close to the hearts of Moors who are looking to be bridge builders in teaching our people to move away from a state of hating on themselves and as a result, hating on others. So it's truly an honor to be doing this interview today. And with that, I want to start with a question as it pertains to the great missionary work of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. On his dial plate was fallen humanity. So as we shift through these more science degrees, how is the upliftment tracked or measured within the temples after one's proclaimed their national identity and divine creed? Plus, I want you to touch on as well just some of the activities that keep the necessity of the Moore Science Temple of America uplifted in the same spirit of what we saw the Moors who went into Spain 711. They had a great job, and they moved to a higher vibration, the planet, from 711 all the way to 1492. So we're seeing a repeat. So can you speak to that? Where are we at as far as Prophet Noble Drew Ali doing his demonstration in 1928, as far as publicly, August 1st just passed, making it known officially that there's an organization, the Moore Science Temple of America, and he's now appointed sheiks, sheikesses, and ministers such as yourself to be able to continue his work. Can you speak to that?
Yes, sir. A lot to unpack there, but I'll do my best. So I would, if we'll start, let's start with, since you mentioned the Moors in Spain from 711. One of the things in the book that I wrote, Moors, What They Didn't Teach You in Black History class, was to actually introduce our people, those who misnomer under names such as Negro, Colored, Black, Ethiopian, about a previous national name that they held, which is obviously Moors, and some of the significant contributions that the Moors contributed to the world. When our people begin to study consciousness, and when you start to study ancient quote unquote Black history, 9 times out of 10 you land back in Egypt with the pyramids and ancient pharaohs and things of that nature. And so but it's very important to understand that takes us back so far that we feel that we don't have any connection with any other civilizations of grandeur. And come to find out that only a century or two after Egypt fell, our people under the name of Moors, descendants of Northwest, Southwest Africa, and other regions of the world which were inhabited, actually came from through West Africa, Northwest Africa, through the Straits of Gibraltar, formerly known as the Pillars of Hercules, into Spain, and as a result, brought with them the grandeur of Moorish culture, Islamic culture, and created a civilization that ruled the world from 711 until 1492. Many of the contributions in Spain were repairing the old Moorish aqueducts, gardening, causing Spain to flourish, building libraries, paving the streets with lights. The libraries were a very significant contribution because while the Europeans were in the Dark Ages, the light of the world was shining bright from the Iberian Peninsula, and many of the people would travel there like they traveled to Egypt to receive knowledge, become enlightened, learn mathematics, art, and other sciences. So the Moors of 711 brought back the knowledge that had disappeared, all but disappeared from the world after the fall of Egypt, and began to give the light of civilization unto the world again. So this was a very important lesson for our people because the Moors did not fall until 1491. And as we learn in our American history classes, that 1492 is when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And this was as a result of having access to the old Moorish trade routes to North, South, Central America, the Atlantis Islands, and other territories or regions of provincial Morocco at that time. So that began our fall, so to speak. In fact, many people start slavery in 1619 in Jamestown. However, the first slaves were the Moors who couldn't ransom themselves after the fall in Spain. And so that is where our fall began. Nobuju Ali was keen on letting us know about this culture and this divine creed, and allowing us to use it as a template to uplift ourselves from the chattel terms that were placed upon us during slavery, because nobody's black, nobody's Negro, nobody's colored. These things are chattel terms that actually remove people from the family of nations. And so he restored to us our nationality and our divine creed. And the upliftment begins there as we are taught. He began to uplift Moorish Americans by teaching them to be themselves. And so it starts with learning our nationality, our culture, our divine creed, and then exploring that in depth and finding measures and ways that we can apply it to our everyday life now to uplift our communities who unfortunately still exist in these chattel terms. Though emancipated from slavery and from bondage, they still exist mentally and psychologically, and in most regards spiritually, under these chattel terms that were placed upon us during that time.
Wow. Thank you for that connection between the 7-Eleven demonstration of the Moors and the great work that they did and what's now initiated right here in America. Unbeknownst to most, it's very unique that historically you have a group of people who've been denationalized, and at the same time you have one who come to them with such a divine message, reminding them of who they are. Because many times we're now hearing through every February Black History Month that so-and-so was the first to do this as a Black person. So-and-so was the first to do this as a more African-American. So-and-so was the first. Yet, according to what you're saying, there is a nation of people who govern the world, civilized Europe. So in essence, this is a continuation. So with that continuation, the Moorish Science Temple of America have what all other nations have, which is the ability to monitor their progress in a beautiful way. And laws are given. One of your recent interview, you speak on the subject matter of customs and you speak on the matter of conjunctive law. Can you speak to that as to how the Moorish government, as structured by Prophet Noble Ali, is able to now connect the rich past of the Moors and now remind them of who they are so they can raise beyond these chattel terms?
Mm-hmm. Yes, in order to do so, I'll start with what you said regarding that that civilization known as Moors, and the Black history, and how so-called Black people in America are considered the first to do this and the first to do that. It's important because when the Moors fell, and some centuries after, there were still Moorish populations in Spain, but they eventually got expelled in the 1500s as well. This is when Spain fell. Spain was a major power, but when the Moors got expelled and Moors were no longer actively participating in Spain, then Spain lost all of its grandeur. And so where did these Moors in considerable numbers end up? In North, South, Central America, based on bondage. And as a result of having these Moors, they were a great national treasure, to the point where now the United States of America is a world power, because the Moors are one of the greatest, if not the greatest, resource to make them a world power, by way of building the nation, by way of contributing to many inventions. Many of the inventions that make America great were designed by these Moors, now under the chattel terms of Negro, Black, and colored. We invented while they owned the patents. So it's very much so an extension, because we brought that light of the world with us. As much as it was attempted to be taken from us, uh, overtly it was taken from us, but there were those who saw that light in us and had us do great things, and we just didn't get credit for it, and they filed the patents and got credit for themselves. So fast forward to 1928, there's a very important document known as in the Islamic world, known as the Treaty of Lisan. After the Moors fell, the Turkish Caliphate took over and pretty much governed the world. But when they fell in 1912, there was the Treaty of Lausanne, which in the Islamic world, everyone was under the Caliphate. But in this particular document, after the Islamic civilization across the world fell, and the Treaty of Lausanne, it empowered the local Muslim communities to now begin to create institutions and systems to govern themselves, being that there would be no caliphate to aid and assist in that particular matter. This was in 1912. The Moorish Science Temple of America was founded in 1913 AD. So this was Noble Jew Ali acting on this ability to now create systems of self-government for not only Muslim people, but our people as a whole, who had been under Muslim protectorate for a very large period of time before we were forced into the religion of Christianity and stripped of our names and titles. So the Moorish Science Temple of America was primarily to uplift fallen humanity. And what that means is there's a few layers of meaning there: to uplift fallen humanity to a higher state of life. Those who have fallen from the constitutional fold of government, fallen from nationhood and divine creed, fallen from their spiritual and moral principles of their forefathers. And by introducing these elements, it creates a shift within our existence, allowing all of these elements to help us reach a higher plane of life, where we can now link ourselves with the families of nations, but also be active in our own self-development individually, and the communal self-development by way of the self-governance and programs brought by the Prophet Noble Jew Ali. In relationship to conjunctive law, we have to first understand what Noble Jew Ali created was not just a religious organization, but also a body politic. And body politics are imbued with the powers of self-government, a body politic and a body corporate. One to aid us in our political plight, and the other to aid us in our economic plight. They're one and the same, but they're different aspects, the body politic and the body corporate. So in relationship to the body politic, which has self-governing powers, the as Moors form various temples, as is taught in our law in chapter 47, Holy Instruction 12, that we are to form and create our own laws and customs in conjunction with the Prophet and the Grand Major Temple, which is the original temple established by Prophet Noble Jew Ali, whom we what we call the 10-10-5-905. And so conjunctive law relates to honoring the laws which came before us and having a continuity of laws, not reinventing the wheel, honoring our forefathers, not putting proverbial new wine and old skins, but actually benefiting from the template that was left for us. All people are left templates and are left systems by their forefathers by which they can now reach a higher quality of life. And that's what Prophet Noble Jew Ali did for us. So within the various temples who do have a degree of autonomy due to the station of the Grand Sheiks and the chairmen, Grand Sheik and chairman within that temple, it's important to know that conjunctive law is what was referred to when the Prophet says forming our laws and customs in conjunction, so that we have a connection to the Prophet and that we're honoring what he left and not just recreating things that may actually be of a lesser quality and of lesser utility.
Wow. Thank you for that draw on that perspective. Well said. And I see clearly the degrees that law governs all event, and through law, the various different temple. Prophet Noble Jew Ali gave us constitution, divine constitution, and he gave us laws, a way of life by way of the circle 7. And it's very important that ones measure up to that, as opposed to, like you said, reinventing the wheel and be that continuity. So he connected back to the great history, raising the vibration so high. So for anyone to kind of make up their own demonstration without that type of divine connection back to the ancestry, it would basically be, like you said, reinvent the wheel. And not only that too, it would not have the effect, because a body politic and a body corporate is something that is so solid that it puts us in line with the necessities of what is now needed to uplift a people that's been branded. So thank you for that, and making those connections. So we see clearly how those more science and those degrees coming by with the adepts, the sheiks, and the officers that Prophet Noble Jew Ali put in place have measurable means that one can now see who's now complying with his directives and who's not. So with that being said, we're going to go to a brief commercial and we'll be right back. I'm speaking today with the National Grand Sheik, COSMO Ill, Nathaniel Booth Ill of the United Moor Science Temple of America. We'll be right back in about 1 minute as we come back from this commercial break. We do have some difficulty as time in the studio. Sometime the technician. Welcome, viewers in America and those worldwide. This is Universal Pathway, and I'm your host, Curtis Douglas Hill. With our show, viewers get to hear our guests share their life lessons from a universal perspective so others can benefit. You can view us live at MillenniumTV24.com Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're on all iOS and Android devices via our app. You can also view us on all smart TVs, Sony, Samsung, LG, also on Amazon, Fire Stick, Roku, Apple TV, Horizon Satellite, and most social media such as Facebook and YouTube. Please encourage others to come and view us with an open mind. Welcome back. I do believe we are back. We're live. Again, prior to the commercial, the National Grand Sheik Nathaniel Booth Ill, Cosmo Ill, is his pen name, authors of many books, really gave us connections and insight as to the great past of the Moors. Now, the Moorish Americans is continued a legacy, and it's really up to preservers and ones who truly love their rich history and have race pride to continue such work. It is universal in nature for one to love oneself first before one love anything that is foreign to themselves. That's just in nature.
Right.
In more science, we say law governs all events. Right now, we have an interesting demonstration that's happening globally. And in that global demonstration, we're now observing, like he said, the path that the Moors went to civilize the world, but we're now seeing a demonstration happening out of Africa today, by way of Mali, by way of Niger, and Burkina Faso. Brother Ibrahim Traore is doing something tremendous in the same spirit of what Prophet Ubudrawali had for his people right here. He's deciding that some of the foreign customs that they've picked up have not served them. What I want to speak to and ask the National Grand Sheik, Cosmo Ill, to speak to, what do you think are some of those customs that we might have picked up here in North America, South America, Central America, the adjoining islands, which we know are the Caribbean islands, that no longer serve us, that we might have picked up during those time period since Columbus came in and the discovery story has been told to so many? Can you speak to that somewhat?
Yes, indeed. Many of your viewers may or may not be familiar with the concept of manifest destiny and the doctrine of discovery, which basically allowed the Roman and Christian forces to strip indigenous people of their land, to strip original people of their land, and force them into the Constantinian form of Christianity, which was created by Emperor Constantine in the Nicene Council, I believe in the 300 BC. And so many of the customs stem from there, stem from worshiping European gods of whom we knew nothing before. When we look at many of the churches around the country that are attended by melanated people in considerable numbers, we'll see that there's still this blonde-haired, blue-eyed, anthropomorphized picture of Jesus on the wall. Although in our Asiatic traditions, we know of the teachings of Jesus, and historical pictures will show you that he was melanated. And even in the Bible, it speaks of his characteristics as being one of a melanated person. And as a result of that, of centuries approximating the image of God with the image of the European, we have begun to put the European in the psychologically in our mind in the image of God. And so whatever the European does, we seem to wish to do, especially if we consider ourselves a godly people. And these negative inferiority complex traits play out in things such as pressing our hair to resemble Europeans often, wearing contact lenses, adopting the dress of the European, adopting the language. And don't get me wrong, every culture has positive and negative aspects. But when you're so thoroughly indoctrinated with a thing, and you're not aware of your principles of your forefathers, and you begin to take on other people's principles, whether good or bad, then that's a very negative thing. Also, of course, accepting and primarily accepting the chattel terms, accepting the fact that we are black, that we are a color, you know, that has no ties to any land, no ties to any flag, no ties to any culture beyond that which begins with slavery, because that's when it was created. So adopting the chattel terms and accepting them as identities is one of the most harmful aspects of the traditions that we have adopted and practiced in North America. And as a result, when you look at our music and when you look at our expressions, you'll see a lot of negative aspects that have been adopted from the influences of slavery. In some regards, the way how we treat our women is a direct connection to how our women were treated on the plantation. The way that we give so much credit to the physical prowess of our brothers and sisters, and how the society in general gives so much emphasis to the physical prowess of us, and not our intellectual prowess, directly stems back to the plantation, where we were taught that, yes, of course, we were strong physically, but mentally the European was superior. And so, in essence, the culture that we practice, even down to our eating habits, is a culture of slavery, such as eating the chitlins and stuff that was actually thrown into the rivers, that was wasteful, but we had to survive, so we would dig it out of the rivers. You know, the water would be cold, and so the oil would form into lard, and we would scrape that lard off of the river, and we would get those chitlins out of the river and make it into a delicacy with the ingenuity of our people and the creativity. And so, and what's funny about that is now it's sold in stores, you know. And this is indicative of what happens with what we do with the scraps that are left for us. We begin to do something that is built solely out of survival, and then it becomes adopted, commercialized, and monetized by others, and of to no benefit to ourselves. And the last thing I would say is, the plantation psychology and culture is very reflected in our music. Again, something that has been co-opted and monetized when you look at hip hop, which in its inception was very much a tool of consciousness to raise our people to a higher vibration, just organically. It just happened organically that way. But then it became something that was commercialized, monetized, and taken over by a system which now only promotes hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. And if you do have some type of message of consciousness that you do want to teach, and you teach a little too hard, you face being blackballed from an industry that only wants to promote the negative. And as a result, this negativity permeates throughout our community in the murder rates, the drug rates, the crime rates, and also is reflected in the prison industrial complex by incarceration rates.
Wow, that is so true and profound. As you were speaking, what came to mind and is just the whole ideology of just how movie function, the characters that one play in movies, and how that can actually, for an actor to take on a role, they got to go into the persona of what it is that they're playing. I think about the character Bishop. I think it was Tupac Shakur who played that character, right? And now in his music later on, the demonstration became thug life. So we have a people now who are just saying, I'm a thug, or the terminology, I'm just going to thug it out. And the only place that benefit with that kind of thing is the prison industrial complex. So imagine that type of frequency, right? One's listening to, you know. I think about another song, the backseat of my Jeep, let's make an episode, right? And I believe that was LL Cool J. So like you said, we lift up our women. We don't want to, you know, look at them as just like, you know, from a sexual point of view, and that's all they're really good for, a good time, as opposed to they are the first teachers, as taught by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, more science. We elevate our women, and not only that too, going back to the teaching itself, for a brother to take a wife in Moorish community, the more science, he first have to submit to the great God Allah. And what is Allah? Truth. Truth that cannot change or pass away. So honest to you for bringing that to light, because the type of frequency that our people are listening to are filled with lies. So take one such as yourself who have the discernment to be able to say, no, we need to move this aside, clean this up, and sometime one have to do even what you're doing. One have to create a haven such as this village in Hawaii to say, hey, you at least have the opportunity to get away from the city life, go back to nature, and literally get into connecting with that earth again, being grounded. Which brings me to this question. You kind of touched on it for the most part, so I'm going to see if I could do a combination. We know that in more science, it teach about the highest self as the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life. So there's a harmony that's coming forth by way of the descendants of Africans in these days. And we've seen that through Ibrahim Shahor's demonstration. We've seen that through Prophet Noble Drew Ali's teaching. We see that through even just what you're doing as the Minister of Culture. And I was asking now, the question is, how do you interpret the metaphysical role of Grand Sheik as a legal figure, spiritual guide, and divine executor of Allah's will in the temple?
Yes. Before I answer that question, if I can camelback off of something you said about Tupac Shakur. And
Indeed.
It's interesting because his music initially was more of a conscious nature, and then he is also one of those that began to be co-opted and monetized. However, in his later years, he started to return to that consciousness and to bring about knowledge, even albeit under the term black, but seeking to bring about black consciousness. And he formed this group. Interestingly enough, thugs, the origin of the thug is actually comes from India, which were the thugs were a group of Indians who actually fought against the British Empire to attempt to try to free the British Empire from free India from the British Empire colonization. And so he began to kind of take on a more revolutionary persona and seeking to help get our people out of the condition. And that might be some reasons of why he's no longer with us. But interesting story, one of the groups that he had formed, Outlaws, I believe it was, I was listening to one of the artists, and I believe his name was Idi Amin. And he helped form that group and helped name the group. And Idi Amin, I believe it was, could have been one of the other ones, tells the story of how the first name that Tupac chose for Idi Amin was Noble Drew Ali.
Wow.
And he wanted that to be his name. And Idi Amin was like, Noble Drew Ali, who is that? I don't know anything about that, you know, and he wanted to pick a more, what he figured was a strong revolutionary persona and end up with the name Idi Amin. So even within the subculture, there are still those who know, but as a result, when oftentimes when we try to teach, sometimes it's so far-fetched to people, and because the history of Noble Drew Ali has been hidden, and if you know what he did, then he should be as known as many of the other leaders, but are melanated leaders, but he's not. He's almost like best kept secret. So I just wanted to put that out there for those Tupacites and those who know him and those who may not know that he himself knew of Noble Drew Ali and respected him as a leader. And so to answer the second question about a Grand Sheik and the in some regards the spiritual and practical position of a Grand Sheik as the executor of the will of Prophet Noble Jew Ali. I think you put it best when you said executor of the will of Prophet Noble Jew Ali. And the divine constitution and bylaws, which are self-governing abilities, are under divine law, and which are secured through the free exercise clause of in the Constitution of the United States, of freedom of exercise of religion. Within that, there's the freedom of to be able to exercise your divine law. It's not something that is only for Moorish Americans and Muslims. There are many faith groups in America who live according to their own laws and have a internal system of government by which they live by. And so Moorish Americans are no different. We have our holy and divine laws. One of those, the most instrumental in our religious organization and our religious body politic, is the divine constitution and bylaws. And in Act 1, it states that the Grand Sheik and Chairman is empowered to make law and enforce law with the assistance of the Prophet and the Grand Body of the Moorish Science Temple of America, and also makes reference to the Assistant Grand Sheik. And so I was asked on another podcast recently, well, how do you get assistance from the Prophet, being that he's no longer here with us on the physical plane? And I explained to the person that was interviewing me that we have what he left, and which goes back to that conjunctive law again. The documents and the laws and our holy and divine laws that were created and or enumerated to us by Noble Jew Ali is the very system that we have, and the Grand Sheik is empowered to create laws and customs in conjunction with the laws and the customs that were left to us, Grand Sheik and Chairman, and to enforce those laws. And when you look at law, as there's three types of divine law, which governs our internal system. One is natural law. And natural law are the laws that are observable in nature and just come natural to being a human being, inalienable rights in a sense. And then you have divine law, which is law based on revelation. In our case, the Great Quran of Muhammad, also affectionately known as the Holy Quran of Mecca, is the book that we have as the revealed word of God. And we have our Circle 7, or Holy Quran of the Moorish Americans, which is our divinely prepared law, and other supreme laws and general laws and additional laws, and our divine constitution and bylaws, so on and so forth, that was left for us to be able to have that that standard of law, to be able to create our laws and connect them with in a conjunctive fashion. And so you have natural law, you have divine law, and you also have positive law. Positive law is basically the exercise of either divine law or natural law, which would be like rulings or laws created from the Grand Sheik based on the divine laws that were left either from their religious texts or from the prophetic government that was set up by Prophet Noble Jew Ali, the divine government that was set up by Noble Jew Ali. And so through positive law, we are able to, in a sense, hear disputes, hear suggestions or referendums, so to speak, from our members and grand body, and are able to create laws and customs that will now become laws and customs for future generations to either follow or to be able to use in a conjunctive fashion as well. So the Grand Sheik and Chairman basically sits in the seat of the Prophet, albeit with a limited amount of sovereignty, so to speak, because there are checks and balances with the Grand Body and the Assistant Grand Sheik, and also with the Supreme Council when if Moors have established that in their region, or local councils which mirror the Supreme Council. So it's a very complex and system, and a very effective system of governance that is just unfortunate that our people don't understand. Many of them are not aware, I should say, that all of this is present for them as an alternative to some of what they're subjected to today. Oftentimes, when you have a divine government and your own internal laws, there may be conflicts and discrepancies with the laws of another society, being that we occupy the same land. And so it's also very important that when these conflicts arise, there is redress and there is remedy by our grand sheiks and our governors to create positive law, to justify for our members and for our society why we are not in alignment with some of the laws that may be created that would violate our religious rights and our national and cultural rights. And there's provision for this. The framers of the Constitution of the United States put provisions in the Constitution for these self-same protections, as many of them, according to history, were fleeing from under the iron hand oppression of the Roman Catholic Church and Christian orders of their day, who had misappropriated their power, and they were seeking to find a more universal way of living where people could express themselves no matter what faith they're from. And so it's important, as far as I'm concerned, to continue to teach about these things, because these are the actual things that are practical, are legitimate, and are lawful, that can raise our people out of the state of mental slavery that we were never truly free from with the Emancipation Proclamation. But that's our job. And the Prophet Noble Jew Ali was on his job when he established the Moorish Science Temple of America for our people and for Asiatics in America.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Well said. As you were speaking, and even making the connection with Prophet Noble Jew Ali, just being able to be the right one to bring the message to the fallen sons and daughters of the Asiatic race here in North America and beyond. I remember seeing a picture a while back, and it showed Prophet Noble Jew Ali wearing a suit, and it says Egyptian adept. You familiar with that image?
Yes.
Islam.
Very familiar.
And
yes, sir.
yes, with that image, it brings to mind also another image, which is the charter. We know in so-called black fraternities, for instance, they'll say, they get a chapter, right? So charter, chapter. We're seeing now where there's a lane that's been created that can easily prevent our people from coming home. So they're now thinking that a charter, not seeing this, they're thinking chapter, not seeing the significance of the charter. So Prophet Noble Jew Ali, being an Egyptian adept, he put a lot of signs and symbol to let ones know how deep his science go back, more science go back. We're seeing the Sphinx, we're seeing the pyramids of Giza, we're seeing the Fez, we're seeing the camel, signs and symbols for the conscious mind, right? So without going too deep into some of the sacredness of what it is that's taught in more Science Temple of America to members, etc., and through the adept chamber, can you just speak to the science of what it means to be an adept and why an Egyptian adept? Why do you think Prophet Noble Jew Ali brought us way back?
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is very important, and there are people who don't really understand that connection and say, well, how can it be an Egyptian adept and a Moor and a Muslim and all these things at the same time? So in order to explain this, I'll employ the great author George G.M. James, who wrote the book Stolen Legacy. And if you're not aware of Brother George G.M. James, read his bio, his life works. It's amazing. He was not just a guy who just wrote about this. He entrenched this. He was entrenched in this. He worked closely with the British Museum and all of the Europeans who were taking Egyptian science and artifacts and things out. And so he was very deep. And he wrote that during the time of Emperor Justinian and Theodosius, these are the ones who finally put the nail in the coffin of ancient Egyptian civilization, so to speak, by closing the Egyptian mystery schools and the Greco-Egyptian mystery schools, the Greek schools that were patterned after Egypt. Theodosius and Justinian in, I believe, the 6th century closed the last Egyptian mystery schools and Greek schools patterned after Egypt. Now, most people think Egypt as falling way back thousands of years ago, but it didn't happen like that. The last schools were closed around then. Now, what he says is that these Egyptian adepts fled to North Africa, parts of Arabia, and he said that the Moors who rose out of North Africa took with them the ancient Egyptian culture that they had preserved into Spain. And so we see here historically, he said they became the custodians of the ancient Egyptian civilization and sciences and mysteries. And we see that this unfold in Spain, which effectively becomes New Egypt. And so that's just a historical connotation. Now, Noble Jew Ali, I'm sure, being aware of these connections, weave that into the fabric of what he brought us. In our Divinely Prepared book, which was admittedly divinely prepared by our prophet, he doesn't pass it off as a revelation. So he prepared it from various sources. And one of these sources has a connection back to Akhenaten. We share some chapters in our book with some of the chapters in the book known as Unto Thee I Grant of the Rosicrucian order. And so this book, when the introduction, the Rosicrucians do not lay claim to this book. They say that they got it from a Tibetan monastery and that the Tibetan monastery informed them that it's traced back to Akhenaten. And when you read the chapters, anyone who's familiar with ancient Kemetic instruction lessons, which were a type of writing in ancient Egypt that dealt with instructions on how to live, how to be pious, how to attain enlightenment, then one would, it reads almost exactly the same. In fact, at the top in our book, it says divine instructions and holy instructions. So these are ancient Kemetic instruction lessons that were that was divinely prepared by Noble Jew Ali to, in a sense, restore to us this type of teaching that had been stripped from us during bondage. All we knew was the Bible from the Constantinian Code and the way that it was taught. So in the beginning of the Circle 7, it says these are for those who love Jesus, because our people came out of bondage believing that they loved Jesus when they were loving the false conception of Jesus. So he taught, cleared that up, as Jesus also in the book, we see that he also studied the various lessons and came through the schools of Egypt as well. And so these lessons and these principles that we learn as Moorish Americans are not new. They are part of the old time religion known as Islamism. And if you study anything about Akhenaten, you'll know that he was the one to introduce monotheism into ancient Egypt. And Islam is based on monotheism. And he was also murdered and dishonored, like many of the prophets who brought monotheism. And so from Akhenaten all the way up, there's been this theme of moving away from ancient pantheons into a monotheistic conception of the divine. And it has traveled from Akhenaten through Moses, another ancient Egyptian figure. He was Hebraic, but raised in the house of Pharaoh and connected with the ancient Egyptian story, all the way through to the various prophets, to Jesus, to Muhammad, so on and so forth. So an adept is one who is taught in these ancient sciences and principles, whether it be the uh, metaphysical and principle aspect of it, or some of the deep spirituality and mysticism, which we reserve to only be spoken of and taught about in the adept chamber, which is a chamber where some of our nation's secret spiritual and esoteric secrets are shared with members who have attained the ability to enter that chamber.
Thank you for that, explanation. I just really want to open that up in the sense of just letting ones know there's a lot of insight that is now received by the various different sheiks, grand sheiks, and the various different officers that Prophet Noble Drew Ali put in place. So every nation have what is sacred to them, and they need their chambers for just that. So honors to you for explaining that as well. We would have loved to actually have more time with the National Grand Sheik, Cosmo Ill. Truth be told, this is our second, but I'm sure there's going to be a third. And periodically, he's going to be one of our honored guests that comes on the show to continue this level of dialogue. But as we close out, can you just speak to a little bit just to what's going on right there in Hawaii as far as the most retreat, and where can they reach you for further information?
Yes, indeed. The culmination of self-governance is acquiring land and being able to practice at self-sustainability, because every nation wants to have some type of sovereignty. Many times people are looking for international sovereignty and forget about the basics like food sovereignty, power sovereignty, how to create your own power, how to create your own food, how to have your own dwellings, organize your own villages, cities, towns, etc., families, according to your own laws and traditions. And so we embarked on this mission to create the Aloha Moorish Village. Was created by Brother Khalid Ill, who invited me to help develop the land. And we've been here for 3 years now. We've built structures and cabins, and we officially opened the retreat side in August 7th, when we have our Marabi Team convention. And this will be the first year that Moors will actually, and others who are visiting, will actually be able to stay on the land and enjoy the cabins, participate in workshops such as solar workshops, water purification workshops, perhaps some construction workshops. We also give back to the land and help to clean up the land, the highways and the roads, and then travel around to various sacred sites. The Aloha Moorish Retreat is actually built in a sacred rainforest. We're in a sacred rainforest here in Hawaii, and it's a perfect place in this wilderness to be able to decompress from the stress of the bigger cities, and to be able to meditate, to be able to participate in healing sessions such as Reiki massage and other spa type activities, and to sit around the proverbial campfires and discuss the business of man, and to discuss where we see ourselves as a people and where we would like to go, and so that we can take these ideas out to our respective communities and help to develop our communities into shining beacons of light, not only for ourselves, but for any others who would appreciate the type of things that we're doing. The retreat also culminates in a purification ceremony that we do here in the waters of Hawaii on the lava rock, to send the positive energy. We rededicate ourselves to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and to send that energy and that vibration across the world through the waters of the ocean here, which are very pristine and very healing. So there's so many positive aspects to what's going on here. Some practical, some spiritual, and some learning. And so this is our 5th year, and we do a pretty good job, have a pretty good time, and we expect over the years to come for things to even get better. We can also, as far as where I can be reached, you can reach me at the Minister of Culture at gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook as COSMO Ill, COZMOEL, and also Instagram, COZMOEL. On TikTok, you can find me at under Cosmo Ill Unplugged. It's a little bit raw. I get a little more raw on TikTok with the type of things that I share. And you can also find my books on Amazon.com under Amazon Books. You just type in author Cosmo Ill, COZMOEL, and a plethora of books will appear regarding history, ancient language, Islamic sciences, and also self-development into the higher self and the lower self.
Gratitude for all that you've brought to the table today and just sharing as the National Grand Sheik of the United Moorish Science Temple of America, a minister of culture, and all that you do as it pertains to uplifting fallen humanity. Honors to you for your great work in walking in the great footsteps of imitating Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Again, you'll heard where to get the books and where to connect with all the great works that the National Grand Sheik is doing. I just want to take the opportunity to thank all the viewers here as well. This is Universal Pathway, and I'm your host, Curtis Douglas Ill. And today we have the opportunity to hear from Cosmo Ill. That's his pen name, Nathaniel Booth Ill, the National Grand Sheik of the Moorish Science Temple of America. We'll see you right here next Saturday from 1 to 2 o'clock. Peace and love to you all.
Peace.
Welcome, viewers in America and those worldwide. This is Universal Pathway, and I'm your host, Curtis Douglas Ill. With our show, viewers get to hear our guests share their life lessons from a universal perspective so others can benefit. You can view us live at MillenniumTV24.com Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're on all iOS and Android devices via our app. You can also view us on all smart TVs, Sony, Samsung, LG, also on Amazon, Fire Stick, Roku, Apple TV, Horizon Satellite, and most social media such as Facebook and YouTube. Please encourage others to come and view us with an open mind.